Let's walk through what we're now learning about a group of left-wing activists who forced their way into a church during a Sunday service. Why? Because they believed, without proof, that a pastor or someone associated with the church had ties to ICE. That belief turned into action, and that action crossed a legal line. Federal authorities are now involved, and this isn't symbolic. The Department of Justice isn't just monitoring the situation. They're actively investigating. Federal agents are on the ground. They've spoken directly with the pastor. They've interviewed parishioners who were inside the church when this happened. This is not hypothetical. This is not exaggerated. This is real. And here's the legal reality. The right to protest does not extend onto private property. It absolutely does not extend into houses of worship. Churches are afforded specific legal protections under federal law, and for good reason. What occurred wasn't peaceful protest. It was a mob entering a protected space, disrupting a religious service, and intimidating people who were there to worship. That opens the door to multiple criminal charges: trespass, disorderly conduct, disruption of a religious assembly, and most significantly, potential violations of the FACE Act, a federal civil rights statute designed to protect people from threats and intimidation in places of worship. That law applies regardless of ideology, and in this case, it would apply to intimidation directed at Christians inside a church. There's another dimension here that can't be ignored. A high-profile media figure appears to have been present and participating alongside the group. If that individual entered private property unlawfully, embedded with the group knowing their intent, journalism is not a shield. Calling yourself press does not exempt you from criminal law. The First Amendment protects speech. It does not excuse participation in illegal acts. Now, there's also a political layer to this, and it matters. The White House today raised a point that many are uncomfortable acknowledging. Rhetoric from elected officials may have contributed to escalating tensions. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz publicly accused ICE of committing atrocities. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey echoed inflammatory language, including calls that federal authorities should get out of the city. Words like that don't exist in a vacuum. When officials use charged rhetoric, it can energize activists, blur legal boundaries, and create an environment where people believe confrontation is justified. And when that confrontation spills into interference with federal law enforcement, or into a church, that becomes criminal. The key legal question investigators will examine is whether public statements by elected leaders materially encouraged or incited unlawful conduct. That is not a casual inquiry. Under certain circumstances, speech that directly fuels violence or obstruction can carry legal consequences. To be clear, no one is saying charges will automatically be filed against these officials. But the possibility exists, and the investigation itself is justified. Federal law enforcement officers were impeded. A religious service was disrupted. A protected space was violated. Those facts alone warrant scrutiny, and this is where the law is unambiguous. People have the right to worship without being harassed. They have the right to gather in churches without mobs storming the doors. Those protections exist precisely because history has shown what happens when they don't. The Civil Rights Division is now reviewing the incident. And as legal analysts have pointed out, this is exactly the kind of situation where federal protections for religious freedom are meant to apply. Ironically, these laws were often enforced aggressively in other contexts in recent years. Applying them here wouldn't be political, it would be consistent. The bottom line is simple. Protest is protected, intimidation is not, speech is free, trespass is not. And when activism turns into coercion inside a church, the law doesn't look the other way. It never has.